So, how in depth do discussions get about the artwork? Do you get into the nuts and bolts of technique? Is the text only discussed in how it connects to the illustrations?
I did the bulk of my preparation looking at what experts had to say about picture book art. I read a ton of books before we even started. We've got our manual called Caldecott. I read this book, which was one of my favorites from cover to cover. There were lots of other picture books that I read. I don't know if you'll be able to see the title, Words, the Narrative Art of Children's Picture Books by Perry Noodleman. I'm reading contemporary picture books by David Lewis. Ways of Telling, Conversations on the Art of the Picture Book by Leonard Marcus. Another really great book, Writing with Pictures, How to Write and Illustrate Children's Books by Uri Shulevitz, excuse me. And a newer book, one that I particularly liked reading before I started, was Show and Tell by Dilys Evans, and exploring the fine art of children's book illustrations. So that's what you do before you start. If you look at the technique in, say, Moon Over Star, and then look at A Couple of Boys Have the Best Week Ever, which was one of our honor books, you would probably say that Jerry Pinkney is the better artist, as did 99% of the people in a presentation in Schoolcraft that I did this past summer. However, the Caldecott is not about presenting an award to the best artist. It is about the artwork that serves the text the best. We look at technique in relationship to the type of story that is being told. The collage done in A River of Words is so perfect for Williams, who wrote poems on scraps of paper, on old medical pads, you name it. While the illustrations are the critical focal point to any Caldecott book, they are not the only items under consideration. We look at how the technique improves or detracts from the story. We look at page turns, which means, how does the artist guide the eye into turning to the next page. We look at lines, we look at shading, we look at the color palette in relationship to the mood the author is trying to create. There are several books in which the illustrators seem to ignore the text, including some by illustrators who should know better. And I'm not going to name any names, just in case you're thinking of asking me. The competition is so intense, however, that I cannot imagine a book winning the Caldecott that has a poor text. The text in The House in the Night is gorgeous, and it begs to be heard. And the words are placed in the book as if they're an essential part of the picture.
Oops, missing video link. In this question, Travis says, I was 0 for 4 in my predictions for Caldecott last year. Old Bear by Kevin Henkes, Wabi Sabi by Mark Reibstein and Ed Young, The Little Yellow Leaf by Karen Berger, and We Are the Ship by Kadir Nelson. People have said that the Caldecott is the most difficult award to predict. Do you agree? Sorry, Travis, for losing the clip.
I love all 4 of these books. In fact, I talk about Wabi Sabi as one of my personal favorites, so it pleases me to be able to give another shout out to this one. Old Bear is the book that the kids who came to my evening Caldecott programs most often chose as their winner. And The Little Yellow Leaf is an amazing book that I also love. Now, no one was happier than I was to hear Kadir's name as the King author winner for his magnificent We Are the Ship. Now, Nikki Grimes gave our committee grief for not selecting it as the Caldecott winner, but never mentioned that it did not win the King Prize for Illustrations either. It was an honor book for illustrations, and that committee has a smaller group of books to consider. I think it probably is true to say that the Caldecott is the most difficult winner to predict, because we do not value illustration as highly as we do words in our culture. One of my pet peeves as a first grade teacher is hearing families tell me not to send picture books home to read because my student is able to read chapter books. Sort of implicit in this request is a devaluing of art. Young students, even excellent reading young students, need illustrations. Because while they may well indeed be excellent at reading books without pictures, They also need to build comprehension skills, and illustrations for young kids are the backbone of comprehension, which is one of the things I discuss with the American Chemical Society. Picturing learning is a skill that we need to develop, and it's not innate. The more time we spend reading the illustrations, sort of reading the pictures, the more our students are going to be able to understand and comprehend those books that come with no pictures. So, consequently, we have not developed the artistic vocabulary for evaluating and discussing art in the same way that we talk about plot structure or text organization. And even here, in the written side, we have vast differences of opinion too. I'm hoping, though, that after having served on the Caldecott Committee, my ability to predict future Caldecott winners will improve significantly.
Speaking of possible future winners, you mentioned on your blog that you'd be bleeding on the table for Jerry Pinkney's The Lion and the Mouse if you were on this year's committee. Are you willing to make any more Caldecott picks? Anything fly under the radar that you think will be in the discussion?
Okay, I'm still pulling for Jerry Pinkney to win this year. The Lion and the Mouse remains the most significant contribution to children's art that I've seen this year. However, I have not had the luxury of reading, picture books like I did last year. Jerry could also win the Caldecott for his, Sweethearts of Rhythm book, which is also beautifully illustrated, but this is the one that's still highest on my list and the one that I would still be bleeding on the table for it to win. A truly under-the-radar book that I have not checked, and I have not even checked to determine whether the illustrator is eligible, is Waiting for Winter by Sebastian, and I'm going to botch this last name, Meschenmoser. I love the way it trusts the reader to understand the wordless ending. It has a few very minor problems with shading. It's a book that more people should discover. It's from a smaller publisher. I'm not quite sure who at the moment. But now Molly Bang's Living Sunlight. This is a book that explains photosynthesis to very young students, and the artwork in this one, kind of shimmers and shines. This has been such a great year for nonfiction books. I'm pulling for an honor on this one. I'm a big fan of Barry Moser, and I don't have a copy of his Once Upon a Twice to show, but I really love this book, and Bale Mouse is how I affectionately refer to it. And it's one to take a look at and find. Posey, illustrated by Catherine Rayner, Linda Newberry's the author, is another one to take a look at. Jason Chin's Redwoods has awesome art that really makes this book notable for me in so many ways. There's Spells by Emily Gravett, Willoughby and the Lion by Greg Foley, Jeremy Draws a Monster by Peter McCarty, The Curious Garden by Peter Brown, Duck Rabbit, illustrated by Tom Lichtenheld. I Need My Monster, another small press book illustrated by Howard McWilliam and written by Amanda Knoll, is one to take a look at. And a great fun book to look at is A Book by Mordecai Gerstein, a previous Caldecott winner. The Hair of Zoe Flieffenbacher by Lori Haltz Anderson. She doesn't just write YA books, illustrated by Ard Hoyt. And I mentioned that one because it's a first grade favorite, along with A Bubble Trouble and Bobby Bramble Loses His Brain. I love looking at Dino Trucks by Chris Gall. These are just, a few of many, many books out this year, including this one, John Brown, in which the artwork is truly stunning, and books that I would be looking at over and over and over again if I were on the committee and writing up my notes and figuring out a way to make cases for these books and for the stories that they tell with the pictures and the text integrated together. Now, for older students, that's very much under the radar that I think more people should take a look at, which has absolutely beautiful art, is a book entitled The Cuckoo's Haiku by Michael J. Rosen and illustrated by Stan Fellows. And it's definitely a book that's under the radar, and it's just gorgeous to read. And, it's hard for me to stop because, I could be doing this with you, Travis, for, the next hour or more. I hate to forget anything.
Oops, I lied. One more video coming. Stay tuned.